Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday morning. We're broadcasting live from the Grand Hyatt Hotel downtown Nashville on Broadway. Of course, what an event! The SEC puts on an event like the Grammys or the Oscars or the Emmys. It is incredible. Over 1,000 media people from press people. We'll use that term, press, from all over the country. TV, radio, the podcast world, the print media, so many people. Like Tony Barnhart, talked to him yesterday. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports. Just incredible the interest that the SEC brings. And a lot of these guys, they're like the traveling Wilburys, man. They were at Big 12 Media Days last week. They'll cover ACC Media Days. They've got Pac-12 Media Days coming up. So Big 10, Pac-12, I think, is in Las Vegas next week, and Big 12 was last week in Dallas. SEC right now. So college football, the unofficial start of college football season, good way to look at it. But just, again, the interest and the number of people that follow these 14 SEC teams, and we're going to soon be 16 with Texas and Oklahoma. We're going to be joined in just a minute by Will Gunter, ESPN 107.5 over in Columbia, South Carolina, who covers the Gamecocks. Talked to him last night. We had a great event hosted by the Nashville Predators, NHL. What a first-class event down there in their, I guess, the VIP lounge like they have at the FedEx Forum. But the food was incredible. You walk down Broadway, man, you feel safe. There's cops everywhere. There's country music playing. And a lot of big cities, you don't want to walk outside. You can do that in Nashville. And everything that they do here in covering all of these 14 schools is great. Yesterday, it was neat. Got to hear from 3 different coaches, Brian Kelly of LSU and Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri and Jimbo Fisher from Texas A&M. Erroneously, put out yesterday, we thought he wasn't going to be able to make it at the last minute. He was there. I actually got to talk to him, Jimbo Fisher. And he was asked the question that every coach is asked. People ask him about recruits that are committed and not signed. What's the over and under on the number of times that question is going to be asked? It's the same thing every time. I'd say the takeaway on Jimbo Fisher and Eli Drinkwitz and Brian Kelly is they know that there's a ton of pressure in the SEC. That's never going to change, okay? The stakes are high. I wonder about Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz competes with, more so than any team in the SEC, the pro sports teams. St. Louis Cardinals baseball is that ginormous shadow with 11 World Series titles. Their only team better than them in Major League Baseball history in terms of World Series titles are the New York Yankees with 27, okay? And then you've got the Kansas City Royals on the other side of the state and the Kansas City Chiefs. Won a couple of Super Bowls here recently. That's got to make it tough. But they did mention the fact he's got 12 players from the St. Louis area. And it's important to get the kids in state. But they also recruit all over the Midwest. And I think when they were in the Big 12, they went a lot more into the state of Texas. Nebraska has never been the same since they went to the Big 10. Not being in the Big 12 or the Big 8, they were in Texas and California, especially the state of Texas, a lot. I don't think that helps Missouri. As far as LSU goes, Brian Kelly, he knows, and everybody knows. You win 10 games last year. You beat Alabama in overtime with a freshman tight end. So the expectations this year are 10-plus wins. Well, you got Jaden Daniels. He and KJ Jefferson, the 2 best dual-threat quarterbacks around. Dual-threat quarterback, in my opinion, doesn't just mean that that you are able to run and get out of a jam. Jaden Daniels and KJ Jefferson are both good passing quarterbacks, but it's nice to have one that is dual threat. But I'd say in the case of KJ Jefferson, don't run so much. He was not available against Mississippi State and LSU. That LSU game was a 13-10 game the Saturday after LSU had beaten Alabama in Tiger Stadium at night. That was a big win. I don't buy into this. Teams are going to be flat after a big win. To me, it's no different than fishing or duck hunting. If I catch a 20-pound grouper or red snapper, I can't wait to get my line back in the water. That is just BS. Okay, I don't buy that. But I think Brian Kelly is maybe 3 games behind Nick Saban in terms of the all-time winningest coaches in college football, active winningest coaches. Okay, not all time, but he doesn't have a national championship. Nick Saban has 7 of them. So that's going to be a question that Brian Kelly is going to be asked over and over until he brings home the championship trophy. All right. And then Jimbo Fisher. Everybody knows last year the expectations coming into the season were really high. Okay. They were number 6 in the country when Appalachian State went to College Station and beat them I guess it was 17-10. And again, A&M ranked number 6 in the nation. Why do we even have rankings? Well, it's all for the media, for the press, for fans. It creates a lot of excitement. But about mid-October is when you know who the better teams are. Very hard. A&M last year, 5-7. They lost a bunch of close games. But when you lose close games, that means, to me, your team's not all reading from the same book. A&M this year, the pressure, this is year 6 for Jimbo. His original deal was 10 years, $75 million guaranteed. And if they wait until after the season, let's say they go 5-7 again, is A&M, are their boosters willing to pony up the $67 million, I think, which would be owed to Jimbo? Still $67 million. I like him. I mean, Jimbo Fisher, people say things about him. I think he should have canned Jameis Winston when he was at Florida State. That guy's he's just a problem. But I do think Jimbo Fisher he's always going to recruit. He's got the NIL machine at the state of Texas. But I think they're going to, the question was asked at Media Days yesterday about him and Bobby Petrino being, who's going to call the plays. And about another question, one question was asked by one reporter about it getting heated in the meeting rooms. And he said, look, have you ever seen a coaching staff when you had meetings, it didn't get a little heated? He goes, you're talking about a lot of competitive guys in one room, a lot of egos. And yeah, absolutely. He said, but I mean, I've had a lot of respect for him. We've had a mutual respect for one another for a long time. So we're going to see what happens. I think a lot of people predict it'll be a disaster. Well, let's see what happens. Bobby Petrino, one of the best offensive minds in college football. We all know about things that he's screwed up on in the past. At some point, if I were people, I would say give him the benefit of the doubt. They've got a lot of talent. Connor Wigman, the quarterback for Texas A&M, came in as a 5-star, played a lot last year. They went with the wrong Haynes King last year. They went with the wrong quarterback, and they got burned. It did not help them at all. Okay, so you start looking at bringing in, and Matt Dean's on here with us. And Matt, I'm just doing my takeaways from yesterday with Jimbo Fisher, and you also had Brian Kelly of LSU and Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri. So, and it was interesting to see and to hear what they all said. And let me say real quick, Matt, before I get to you, I want to thank all of our sponsors, especially those ones that are the sponsors for SEC Media Days here at the Grand Hyatt Hotel on Broadway in beautiful downtown Nashville. Got up and went for a great run this morning down in the Music District. It's cool. You see a lot of people walking around, guitars on their backs, living the dream, man. There's the next Jason Aldean, the next Willie Nelson, next Johnny Cash. I probably saw him out there this morning. But Miss Rubin's Rubs, Black Magic, White Magic, Seafood Magic, Creole Magic, and the marinades. Go to your grocer, ask them, do you have the Miss Rubin's Rubs? If they don't, tell the manager, hey, I'll be back when you do. If you can't find them, go to missrubins.com. You can also order them from Amazon. They're available. I think Jay Evers told me in now about 1,000 grocery stores. It's great on brisket. They're great on anything. They're Greek rubs since 1935 out of Montgomery, Alabama. Absolutely love Miss Rubin's Rubs. Also, my good friend Chris Aiken, Web-Footed Kennels over in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Chris, I've known him 28 years, produces some of the top dogs in the country. Follow him on Facebook, Web-Footed Kennels. Chris will be on here with us tomorrow or Thursday, just doing a little bit of preseason work. Dove season will be here less than 6 weeks. I pray to God that you don't have your retriever sitting in front of the air conditioning all summer and not train him, because if you do and you take him duck hunting, that is animal malpractice. So Chris Aiken will be on with us throughout the season. We'll be doing more hunting and fishing, dog training work. Gaddis Home Innovation, George Gaddis, known him 45 years. Gaddis Home Innovation, if you want to make your home, your life easier, security cameras. You work remote. You've got an office. You're putting a Bloomberg in. TV, security cameras, everything. Check them out, gaddishome.com, Gaddis Innovation. They can build your man cave a lot cheaper than it would be if you went and got one of the so-called experts. George can do anything. Also, rumbleboxinggym.com, 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis, across from Walgreens at Union and McLean. Open every day. A lot of the workouts are starting at 5:30 and 6 o'clock in the morning. It is like swimming on land. Check them out, rumbleboxinggym.com on our website. And, of course, Hewlett and Dunn. I'm wearing the Rock Mount shirt here. That's what Elvis wore. That's what Johnny Cash wore. Ronald Reagan wore. Bob Dylan. Everybody needs Rock Mount shirts. They got a huge order of Filson coming in for the fall. They've got Devil Dog jeans, Old South clothing, Stetson, Ariat, you name it. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square, Collierville, Tennessee, since 1961. HewlettandDunn.com. They will ship anywhere. Matt Dean, Rhodes College in Memphis. Got to say real quick before I go to Will, my good friend, I've known him since kindergarten, Eddie Murphy. The Ed Murphy Track Classic is going to be at Rhodes this year. I'm sure you're aware of that. And I've got to get you hooked up. Eddie's in the bond business like I am. And his father won the mile 3 years in a row at Tennessee, was roommates with former Tennessee coach, the late Johnny Majors. His blood, I checked it one time as a kid, it was volunteer orange. But Rhodes College, y'all are going to be the center of the universe for track and field August 4th and 5th, and we'll be doing our show from over there. Will Gunter from Columbia, South Carolina. Nice getting to visit with you and meet you in person at the Bridgestone Arena. And I'm just going to start off with you, Matt. You got to watch a lot of this on TV yesterday. After, of course, you got home from work. No fun of any kind at the office. But what was your takeaway from day one of SEC Media Days?
Well, honestly, it's pretty simplistic. I think Brian Kelly looks more comfortable in year two. I think he knows that they had some big wins last year. Obviously, the Tennessee game and the early kickoff didn't go their way, but his decision to go for two and their win against Alabama won over a ton of fans. Returns a quarterback, has a quality backup. And quite frankly, I think LSU is going to be right there in the West. Listen to some of the stuff with Jimbo. I watched some of Feinbaum as well. He can say what he wants. He can spin it how he wants. But I think this is a really big year for them to show improvement. I think the fan base has rallied behind the idea of Petrino maybe calling plays. But I think at the end of the day, it is what it is. I don't see the Aggies varying much from what they normally do. I do think getting Bryce Foster back at the center position, he was such a huge influence for that offensive line, a big loss. Connor Wegman is a really talented quarterback. They have a lot of weapons outside. I think they're going to be improved, but you have to be when you were 5-7.
Yeah.
Maybe that means 7-8 wins, but that's still not going to be good enough for the fan base. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Well, when you think about the money that they spend, Will Gunter, I I don't know. I think Shane Beamer makes about $6 or $7 million a year. And when you look at these coaches, you want the immediate return on investment. You heard what he said about Jimbo Fisher, Eli Drinkwitz yesterday, Brian Kelly. What was your takeaway from any and all of those coaches? Maybe do you agree with Matt?
It's funny. I talked about this on the radio. I think you're seeing, I understand now on people, the age of people and how long they've covered SEC Media Day. And you become more and more cynical about how coaches talk. We don't have Steve Spurriers. And unfortunately today, we're not going to have Mike Leach, which is really unfortunate because my takeaway from yesterday was aside from Brian Kelly kind of trying to explain the gap between the SEC and Georgia, I guess you would say, we got nothing. Eli Drinkwitz didn't want to be there yesterday.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what exactly he had to do or where he needed to be. He didn't want to be there. Brian Kelly kind of talked about his team as you do, but he did mention a few things. Jimbo, him, and hauled around any question that was asked of him. And then Greg Sankey talked for, I don't know, 30. It felt like 30 minutes. I watched the region's bank representatives completely check out that were standing next to me. It's just what it is. There's not any personality. Coaches are so worried about saying something, or in Jimbo's case, giving any kind of information away that he thinks could be used against him. I guess he thinks that people are that don't know what Bobby Petrino's all about, and that they're gonna start studying that. It's just we spent a lot of time this morning talking about how to change this event and make it more fan friendly. Because today, what is it? Clark Lee goes here, I think in a few minutes. Kirby Smart's going to probably have to answer some questions about the behavior of his team.
Yeah.
He'll tap dance around that. What are we getting out of this thing with coaches? Now, you don't have the fun days of Steve Spurrier or Mike Leach, of so many coaches. There's a lot of personality in this league. Jimbo Fisher's got a lot of personality. Brian Kelly too. And yet you get guys that go up there and it's just, it's dull. We're not getting some of the content that I think we want.
Yeah, I agree. And Eli Drinkwitz was like, I was hoping I would talk long enough to where I wouldn't have to answer any questions. To hell with you, man. And when your team, I've had enough of that. I mean, everybody has. And I'm with you about Steve Spurrier. He called it talking season. These coaches are paid a lot of money. Last time I checked, hold on a second. Yeah. 13 of these 14 schools are state universities. Who funds those? Taxpayers. They go up there and act like they're God, and they don't want to talk. They don't want to answer any questions from people. I mean, someone that needs to be pointed out to them by the commissioner before they get there. Listen, all these people are paying a lot of money to travel from all over the place, all over the country to come cover you. But they also shouldn't feel threatened, Matt, to where if they say something, is it the right thing? You know what? Scared man ain't never want to fight. Walking around on eggshells isn't the way to live your life. If you got something to say, I'm with you. Steve Spurrier, Mike Leach, the old coaches, maybe they ought to start drinking before they come in there.
Will raises a great point. I will say this about Jimbo. Last year he came in pretty hot. Remember him and Saban had that thing going from what really Jimbo started. A lot of it was the NIL deal. And in the year before, A&M had some success beating Alabama. But he was very humbled yesterday. And Will's right. He just was very evasive. For those of you that know him, he's not going to give control up of anything. Okay? So for him to sit there and say, he can say what he wants about Petrino. How's it going to work when the stuff hits the fan? That's my question. Yep. I mean, Bobby is Bobby. He wanted back in a bigger environment. I know he had gone to UNLV temporarily as the OC, and now he's back in the Power 5 in the best conference in America. But I think the story this year, for me, it's really simple. On the East, the old Ric Flair saying, to be the man, you got to beat the man. It's Georgia until someone beats them. And then on the West, I think you got an interesting case. LSU has to go to play at Tuscaloosa, right? I think that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
we're going to hear all this stuff about who the quarterback situation is in Alabama, but the reality is up front, Bama's still Bama. I think they're going to pound the rock. I still like Bama in the West. But personality-wise, you don't see that anymore, guys, because it's such a canceled culture. We used to talk about, I'm a former coach, used to talk about bulletin board material. Well, now it's social media banter, and you just got to be careful what you say. And that's what the beauty was of Mike Leach. They had a stat from last year, the number of opening words in the opening statement. Mike Leach opened up with 7 words last year, and it was beautiful. You can't replace Mike Leach on the field, off the field, and he's got so much respect throughout the country. And he was tainted for a while with the whole incident at Texas Tech with the player situation.
Yeah, with Craig James' son. Yeah, I do. Me too. And Will, I like the way you saw it, and Matt, both of y'all. This cancel culture is a bunch of crap. Okay, the First Amendment. It's in the Constitution. The right of free speech. We don't hold back on this show. So you want to say something. The coaches should feel that way. God, I can remember media days back when you had Vince Dooley, Pat Dye, and Steve Spurrier. It was so much fun. It was so much. Of course, we've got to reverse this trend. I mean, Buddy Martin. I was on his show last night, GatorbaitMedia.com. Tony Barnhart was on there right before I came on. You know what? Quit calling it the media. Call it the press, because the media is anybody that has one of these and goes out for just clickbait and whatever. Let's get some content. But Eli Drinkowitz, man, and first off, how do you have any sympathy for these coaches when if they get fired for not doing their job, they are left with generational wealth, Will Gunter?
Well, let me go back to something you mentioned, because I had this conversation last night about yesterday. Whether you want to call it the media or the press, the media's got to do a better job. You know what? Yeah. Because you have people, and I don't ask questions. I like listening. I don't have maybe I'll ask something in a more confined environment if I want to know something with Shane Beamer to talk about on my show. But so I'm not going to ask questions. But I mean, you had one guy yesterday who was trying to ask a question to Brian Kelly, and his question involved that LSU lost by a point to Alabama. Look, I don't consider myself media. I'm an entertainer. That's if you ever listen to our show, we cut up. We talk about different things. We laugh. I don't try 6 to 9.
So do we. 6
to 9 Eastern time. People don't want to get up and be trying to get their kids to school and be listening to hard hitting radio. That's afternoon stuff. But I do think the media has got to be better in asking these guys questions, and not the same ones. Now, they did kind of try to hold Jimbo's feet to the fire yesterday, and he evaded. He didn't. Okay, fine. But you just don't get. And I think there used to be more of a friendship between reporters and coaches, but there was an honesty. But you knew a few things that you could ask that would get these responses. People knew you could ask Mike Leach about Halloween candy or his thoughts on aliens, and you knew you were going to get something great. We don't know a lot about Jimbo Fisher or Eli Drinkowitz to ask them. Maybe he should have been asked yesterday more about Drinkowitz's affinity for Steve Spurrier, to give him a chance to show personality. I've said with Hugh Freeze today. Granted, this isn't going to happen, but Hugh Freeze should come in like the Minion, and I forget one of the men with the crown on, with the cape on, with the little specter or whatever, and have his players carry him in. Do something cool. Let these coaches show some personality, because that's kind of going back to what y'all said. If they show personality, then the media can kind of build off of it, and you can ask questions that aren't just like, "Hey, Brian Kelly, what do you think about Logan Diggs, your transfer portal running back?" Because I go and fall asleep. So I think that's interesting. I forgot you were asking me something else that was opposite of what I talked about, but we'll see today as we continue to move on.
Yeah. Well, the thing yesterday when Greg Sankey was talking about NIL, and he said he went up to Congress, and I did want to ask this question, then I got distracted and got called out of that meeting room for something. But I would say, what was the appetite like? What was your takeaway from your week up in Washington? They called it SEC on the Hill. The Sherman Antitrust Act was put in by Senator John Sherman from Ohio in 1890. Okay. It's not a constitutional amendment, but it says that you can have open commerce in all 50 states. So, the question I would say is, hey, the state of Texas, the legislature said, we don't care what the NCAA says. We're going to do whatever we want. I would like for, I guess a good question would be, you forced Mississippi and you forced Georgia to change their state flags if they wanted SEC championships in those states. Are you going to go to Texas and say, look, we got 12 states, 16 teams. We're either all on the same page or we're not a conference. That's a topic that needs to be brought up, because NIL is going to crumble. There's a lot of money. I'm seeing some questions from some listeners right now saying the cat's already out, the bag. I think it's just going to crush and collapse on its own weight, because there are only so many fools out there that will put money into unproven teenagers, and without an ROI, they won't keep it up. Return on investment, Matt.
No,
Will, whoever.
No,
well,
go ahead, Will. Go ahead, Will.
Well, here's what I was going. That's been going. People have been putting money into unproven teenagers since football started. That's now it's just open. Now it's just out in the public. We know about Jaden Rashada and everybody else. It used to be Eric Dickerson got a Corvette from Texas A&M, but then SMU upped it. These things have been going on. There's still stories about Herschel Walker and how he ended up at Georgia over Clemson. So with all that being said, that's not going to change. What I think, here's the big thing with NIL that I had a discussion with a coach in the month of June about. College football is going to have to become more like the NFL in that you're going to consolidate whatever we do with the Big 12. Big 12 looks okay for now, whatever we do with the Pac-12. And you're going to have to say, look, you have a governing body, and it's not going to be the NCAA, but we're going to have a 64-team upper division, whatever you want to call it. These are the rules to participate in every conference. You can't have the SEC can't have rules that is different than the Big Ten, because Texas A&M is going, hey, to win the national championship, or Texas is going to say the same thing. I don't need to just match up with Alabama in conference. I got to be able to match what Ohio State's doing, what Southern Cal's doing in California. If Oregon gets it going, or if they can figure it out, whatever. Yeah. It's not just what is my conference doing? It's what is Ohio State doing? What is Clemson and Florida State going to be doing? What is their conference allowing? And that's where you have to consolidate all this to have one. And because the NCAA they're toothless. I mean, look what just happened to Tennessee. The NCAA is toothless.
Yeah. The NCAA is basically feckless, spineless, and a dinosaur. I mean, they're going to be a fossil fuel well soon, because they're not doing anything. Will's right. You got a son on the staff out at Oregon. Pac-12 media days are coming up next week. I was talking to, actually, Big Ten media days are next week. But I think, let's think about the Pac-12. Oregon, and no, your son can't say anything, but what if Oregon and Washington go to the Big Ten? What are we going to do with the Pac-12? We don't want football to disappear on the West Coast, but I think they're All right, we're back here with here we go. Here we go. All right, boy, the marvels of technology. The internet gods were good to us. Only about a
I
minute.
don't. I told you real quick. It was easier to tackle Tank Bigsby than the engineer downstairs when the internet went out at about 8:40 this morning. That man could not be touched trying to figure out how to get Radio Row back up. It was pretty entertaining to watch.
Was he able to do it?
I'm upstairs now. I'm actually on the. I'll find out in a little while. It's no longer my problem until 5 a.m. local time tomorrow.
Well, I remember talking to someone who was in Afghanistan using a laptop to call in airstrikes for the smart bombs. And he said, the Wi-Fi never failed. And that's a good thing. I'm like, yes, that's a very good thing.
Okay.
In their case, much more serious than what we're doing. But anyway, I do remember that well. Look, let's we got a shortened show today, this morning, 29 minutes. So I'm not going to talk that fast, but I think both of y'all are really making a lot of sense about these coaches, about what is going on. And Matt, you're right. Matt, Matt was a women's basketball coach at Rhodes College for 16 years, and he coached with the men with Herb Hilgeman for a long time as well, a Hall of Fame coach. And I'm with you, Matt, and Will, you've coached. And you know what? I am so against the cancel culture, against all this PC crap. I just tell you what I think. I don't give a flip. I'm going to say what I think. I'm going to stand. I'm going to stick by my guns. But I think the coaches need to not be afraid to come out and say, hey, if they don't have a good team, they say, we know what goes on behind the scenes. You've got kids that are showing up and coming into your office going, hey, I need another $75,000, $100,000 on my NL deal or I'm leaving. Okay, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out, Matt. That's what I tell them. I'm sorry, but I will.
Well, Will made some really good points about NIL before we lost the internet there. And I want to expand on a couple things. I think to take it to a step further, my son does work in Power 5 recruiting and scouting and those type of things at Oregon. But how you manage the portal right now almost makes this an NFL job. And what I mean by that, I don't think Sonny Dykes gets enough credit for what TCU did last year. Now, I know they got the heck beat out of them in the title game, but the fact they went and got into the college football playoff, it's a lot of the work that their coaching staff did right out of the gate to get some big-time players into that program. And I think if you're a program that can't bring in a top 25 class, okay, and what happens is if you bring in multiple top 10, top 15 classes, you have stability with the high school market. But if you're not working the portal, it really becomes difficult to be an elite program. And there's a lot of coaches out there right now. They want no part of the portal, but they're starting to adapt because you have to. Because what happens is not every 4 and 5 star is going to go somewhere and be happy. So they're going to look for a different venue. You got to be willing to take a chance and roll the dice on some kids if the background checks out. And I think you're seeing that across the country. And really, regardless of what happens with NIL, coaching still matters. And I think, you look at what Georgia's done, Kirby Smart's not going away. He's got a phenomenal plan defensively, every game plan. He's going to get some of the best college players in the country. And I just think really NIL, Will said it best. I mean, the NCAA is toothless right now, right? I mean, they are. They're not going to do anything about it. And the state-by-state argument, that's not going away either. So right now, if I was a college coach again, if you put me back in this environment, I'm focused on getting the best high school group I can get every year. And every year I got to add from the portal. And if I do that, I can remain competitive.
Yeah. We'll look at a 25. You can sign 25 kids a year. We know in the past schools have signed 35. They know a lot of them weren't going to qualify academically. Let's look at it now. You might sign 15 kids out of high school and 8 or 10 out of the portal. And Matt's right. And there's a suggestion from a listener of ours, Jethro Toll, and he's saying put a salary cap on there. I mean, look at what's going on in pro sports. We have salary caps there. Now, I'm against anything that makes college sports more like pro sports, but you're going to just have a handful of schools, and you'll kill interest nationally if you've only got 6 or 8 schools that are and it's not that different right now. Who gets the top 100 players? 70% of them go to 8 schools. Will.
Well, the cat's out of the bag, and I don't know how you put it back in, because you say, well, even if you put a salary cap on it, then you're just going to have the boosters going back and going, oh, okay, well, we'll just slide this under the table and we'll go back to the way it used to be. Oh, you can only get so much. That's cool. Here's how we'll do it. College football's changed and it's evolved. That's as Matt was saying. Like you now have to know how to handle the transfer portal. And remember, there's no 25-man scholarship limit anymore. It's 85 number. You get it on August. I think it's August 1. You got to be at 85.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fair because, it happened to South Carolina this past year. They lost 2 players that they didn't anticipate losing. One went to Southern Cal and one went to Oregon. And, both of them would be starters. Both of them would be starters at South Carolina. If South Carolina had both of those players, maybe they'd be projected a little bit higher this year. That was not anticipated, and that's going to happen. I had a conversation with a coach last year as all this evolved, and he said his opinion was you were going to see more assistant coaches go try and get into the NFL because you can spend, recruiting is 365 days a year. I think people see the money, fans see the money and go, man, I'd love to be a college coach. But I had a college coach say, if I'm not up until midnight texting kids across the country, I'm getting beat by somebody. He goes, so now I'm texting kids all night long. I'm having to talk to their parents, their handler, the stress that's involved. Okay, I find this diamond in the rough and I bring him here. Well, all of a sudden he blows up his freshman year, and somebody in his state let's just use, if you bring a kid up from Florida, because you got Miami, Central Florida now, you got Florida, and one of those schools says, oh, we should bring him home. Well, let's contact somebody in his camp. And well, you spent all that time recruiting him, maybe 2 years, maybe 24 months. He has 4 good months, and another school says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go pick that kid. It's crazy how it is now. And you have to have that 85-man limit because you don't know what's going to happen. Look at what Deion Sanders has done. And everybody says, well, Deion's operating in the world of college football right now. And quite frankly, you talked about it. Deion, I don't care if your name's Deion Sanders or Billy Napier or Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. If you don't win, you're gone. Yeah. You're out the door. Yeah. There's no more, hey, you get 4 years to rebuild. It's 2 now. It's 2 years. You got 1 year to fix your roster, and you better win in year 2.
Yeah, and David Schultz is on with us from the GOAT down in Lafayette, Louisiana. And David, you had the internet issues. We all are, and you made it on here. But Matt Dean, Will Gunter, David Schultz, what we're seeing, Radio Row. What's it like down there on Radio Row right now? That's why I planned ahead and said I would do it in my room because I was afraid there may be these problems. But is the engineer down there working on it? It's obviously
they are working on it. Yeah, they are working on it. I got an air card that seems to have fixed. I can't get my headphones to line up with the Bluetooth. I do have to comment. I did not realize that Salvador Dali was making shirts these days there, Rob, but that's what that kind of looks like. So that's a job well done by you. I couldn't pull that off, so I appreciate those who can. It's a tight squeeze. We're all pretty loud despite using microphones. We all seem to love the sound of our own voices, but somehow we all make it work because generally we can have the headphones and we only hear our voice, which is the only thing we want to hear anyway. So,
yeah. I mean, this is the Rock Mount shirt that I got him at Hewlett and Dunn. It's the Bob Dylan's favorite shirt. Ronald Reagan and Elvis Presley wore these things, but it's Salvador Dali, Audrey. Dave Schultz said, "I'm good to see Salvador Dali is making shirts now." But look, let me get your takeaway. We've been talking, Will and Matt, a lot about these coaches and how they feel so with the governor, like they've got a muzzle on them. Who are the personalities? I mean, what was your takeaway from day one of SEC media days from those 3 coaches, Brian Kelly, Eli Drinkwitz, and Jimbo Fisher, and the address that was given by Commissioner Greg Sankey?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I missed the Eli Drinkwitz thing. I don't know if he said anything because that would be the one guy or a couple of the guys that are going to really kind of get out of the box and get some attention, right? Eli Drinkwitz doesn't get a whole lot of national and regional attention, outside of when he's playing, the Georgias or the Tennessees or the LSUs or the Alabamas. And certainly when he's going up against a Brian Kelly and a Jimbo Fisher, he has to try and say something to garner that attention. This is his time to shine. Everybody else was pretty good. I actually got the chance to talk with Brian Kelly, and he gave me a couple of good lines that we posted at 103.3 The GOAT. So, and I don't think Jimbo said anything. I didn't notice if he said anything out of the ordinary. I think some of these coaches, I think the big-time coaches don't like SEC Media Days anymore. It used to be something that promoted the conference. They don't really need that anymore. We appreciate it. I think the fans like it. I know even some radio hosts think it's a little bit of a waste of time. I like it. I'm still a kid. I still get a kick out of having the head coach of the LSU Tigers on my radio station. I get a kick out of having the quarterback for LSU on my radio station. I just turned 54, and yet I still feel like I'm 25 when that happens. So I get a kick out of it. So
yeah.
I think we talked about that this morning on my radio program. I think the SEC, and you kind of hit at it, the SEC is at a crossroads with this event. And obviously we're going to Dallas next year, but the SEC wants to make this a fan event. They want to turn this into where you talk to your family and you look and you go, hey, and in July, the SEC's coming and we can go and we can kind of participate and we can get excited about football season. Let's go if it's 3 or 4 hours away. Let's go check it out for a day or two. I'm interested to see where the SEC goes with this event because of what you just said, Dave, about some coaches are agitated with this. They've had enough. You go in there and you've got some, I hate to say it for lack of a better term, you got some podcasters who don't know what the score of the Alabama LSU game was and they're asking questions and, they get annoyed with that. I don't think they mind the reputable people. I don't think they mind the radio host who they go on, the people who do their research. But the SEC wants this now to be a fan event. Obviously, tonight we've got this concert down here. I found out this morning who Midland was. Turns out I've heard one of their songs. Hey, great, okay. But they want this to be a fan event. They want to promote the SEC. How does this event change now moving forward? I'm very intrigued to see what the SEC does here with this media days moving forward, because it's becoming less about the coaches and more about the fans and getting the fans involved.
Well, the first thing you have to do is not hold it where you can't get walk-up traffic to the hotel. So that, for those who are not here, not only is the bridge where the hotel is located closed off to automobile traffic, but you cannot walk it, right, which is a mistake I made on day one on Sunday. So that's neither here nor there because it's not under the SEC's control. But they vary, even at Hoover, right, where the fans come into the lobby, they're still all kind of a cattle call, right? They're still all kind of locked into that one area. Some of the coaches, and we see Nick Saban signing autographs. We saw pictures of that yesterday. So they try to do it a little bit, but it just seems to be a heavy lift for some of these guys when it really should be the opportunity to say, all right, this is where we were. This is where we're going. Let's get excited, right? Camp is opening up, in like 2 weeks. Right, for us radio guys, right? We had in Louisiana, we went from the College World Series. LSU played in the final game of the College World Series. I already was at home and then go on vacation, come back. I got 10 days to figure it out. We had some news story on Monday and then Tennessee happened on Friday. Now we have SEC Media Days. Next week, I got Sunbelt Media Days, and then we can wrap all that up and camp opens up. I think NFL opens up before the colleges do. So it just gives us content year round. And really, that's all we just want something to talk about compared to which movie are you going to see this weekend, Oppenheimer or Mission Impossible, which I will see both, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the planning. I mean, the hotel's great, but I went running this morning, ran out of the hotel, ran
unless
down
I
Broadway.
see video, I ain't buying that. No, I don't believe that. I need to see video.
I was running down Broadway though this morning.
No.
And you see, it's just like the people with the guitars on their backs coming out of the bars and stuff. Kid Rock's got a bar down there. I mean, it's a great place to have it, Matt Dean. And you think about the SEC. Talk about these coaches not wanting to be here. The fans are not being. The fans are coming. Look at season ticket sales. Tennessee has got a 6-year plan. Less than 2 years into it, they have sold every season ticket. Auburn has sold every season ticket. They've been sold out for a month. Matt, you've got a son at Oregon. Oregon, a nonstop flight from Eugene to DFW. That is a program that wants to be, they're located out in Oregon, but they want to be playing teams back east. I love it.
Well, the last 2 years, they've had, I think, over 12 commitments / signings from the state of Texas. They're dipping into Mississippi to get running backs. They're going to Georgia. They're going to Alabama. I mean, Georgia, Oregon has been in 2 national championship games. They've lost them both, but they have a lot of history, and they do it with players because of their brand. Kids love the gear. They love the swag. They love the uniform combinations. They're up and coming. They're always a factor. Touching back on Will's point, we Dave, before you joined the conversation about this whole, Will made a comment about 24/7 in recruiting these days with coaches and some of your conversations. Well, it's the truth. This is a 3-week window we get to see our son. He works for Oregon. There's only 2 times a year we get to see our son. A little bit in February after the signing period, and then this time in July. So I think a lot of these guys come in here, and I think they're just beat down. They're trying to get a vacation in with their families. And, unless you're just coming in here just trying to, like last year. I said this earlier, Dave, before you joined. I mean, last year Jimbo came in hot because him and Saban in the offseason traffic. Well, this year he got humbled. Got his butt kicked last year. Not a lot to say. I thought Petrino would be probably more of a conversation piece, but he kind of, defended it off a little bit in terms of who's going to call plays. Jimbo Fisher's going to call plays. For those of you out there curious, Jimbo's going to call plays. How's it going to work when there's a conflict of interest in the 3rd and 4, late in the situation in a game where they have to have a first down? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, can I talk? I heard Will right before I hopped on talk about, these guys are feeling pressure, and I presume you're talking about Napier trying to get things going in year 2. Wait till we get a 12-team playoff and then 16-team playoff.
Yeah, you're right.
You miss a 16-team playoff, a couple years in a row. We talked about that, Rob, a few months ago. You guys think there's now with 4-team, right? A&M misses a 4-team playoff a couple years in a row. That's one thing. You miss a 16-team playoff or a 12-team playoff a couple years in a row, heads are going to roll. That's not necessarily fair, but that's exactly what's going to happen.
Well, I wasn't specifically talking about Napier, but I guess that point was the transfer portal. Now, your timeline to build a program is no longer 4 years. You're expected to do it. I'm watching Shane Beamer at South Carolina. He's used the transfer portal. Obviously, Juice Wells and Spencer Rattler and Jordan Strawn from Georgia State, and he's landed some defensive backs. And that's what I'm saying. And people are going to say, well, if little South Carolina and Shane Beamer can turn it around in year 2, why can't big bad Florida, or what are you doing at Texas A&M or so forth? That transfer portal has now changed the timeline for coaches expected. And you guys make great points about that. College football playoffs about to evolve. You better get into it. And the fact that you can potentially get in with 3 losses or who knows what, it's not going to be considered that era anymore of, 10-2 was a good season, but you didn't make the college football playoff for the up. No. You better be in that college football playoff for certain programs each and every year. And that timeline is going to accelerate. You're making a lot of money. There's a massive investment in you now. Look at Eli Drinkowitz. There's a lot of money in that guy. That guy's got as much pressure as Jimbo Fisher, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Did he get an extension?
Yeah, mainly because he keeps beating South Carolina. He literally is like 4-0 against South Carolina, and the guy he beat him at App State, and he's beaten South Carolina 3 straight years to get to say he literally keeps getting it. He beats South Carolina and gets an extension. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Well, good for him, I guess.
Well, here's something interesting, y'all. You think about when you pay these people so much money, that's what makes the coaches targets. But guys, I was at an event in Atlanta, Auburn Ambush. They had all these Auburn coaches, Hugh Freeze, Bruce Pearl up on the podium. And that's the first thing that Hugh Freeze did. He said, I got to get on this. He said, as soon as I leave here tonight, I'll get in that plane. On the way to the plane to go back to Auburn, can't believe they didn't just drive. It's an hour and a half away. And I'm going to be texting till I fall asleep. And we know if they're not using this, they'll get a burner phone. I mean, it never stops. You just referenced it. If I'm not up till 1 a.m, somebody else is beating me. I wonder how many coaches are going to – Nick Saban, I mean, he doesn't look like he's burned out, but these young guys, how many guys will be someplace 10 or 15 years going forward? it's going to get a smaller window, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't even see it. What is it? We just lost Pat Fitzgerald, and he was there for 17. And you got Kirk Ferentz is what is Ferentz is the
You're 25.
Huh?
You're 25 at Iowa.
Yeah, and he's the leader right now. Am I right on that? NCAA, he's the longest tenured coach. There was a statistic the other day I never knew I was going to be having this conversation, and I think you're going to go back and look it up about the percentage of coaches that are at their university in Power 5 that are 8 years or less, and it was something ridiculous like 70%, 75, 8 years. It used to be 8 years was pretty, and I always, because of Shane, we always talk about Frank Beamer, and you look at his tenure. And he struggled for 4 years. I think in year 3 he was 2-9 and 2-8-1 or 2-9. Today, if you go 2-10 in year 4, you're done. It doesn't matter what you've done; you're out the door.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I just want to point this out. I'm playing fast and loose with the rules, but we're SEC guys. I realized this morning, y'all know Will Muschamp has picked up 4 victories in the last 4 months because Les Miles had to vacate 2, and Jeremy Pruitt had to vacate 2 over. Will Muschamp now has a winning SEC record. 60. He's 60-47 overall and 38-33. I know that technically he doesn't get those wins, but we were joking about that this morning. 4 victories in the last 5 months because of Les Miles and Jeremy Pruitt. He should try to claim those.
Yeah. Well, I mean, nobody will. And they lost 37. They had to give back. I mean, hey, guys, we got about 8 minutes because we're going to a shorter version of the show today. But what are y'all looking for today? We're going to have Hugh Freeze, Kirby Smart, Zach Arnett at Mississippi State, and Clark Lee. What do y'all want to see? What do y'all want to hear? What questions do y'all want to ask?
With Kirby, it really is a tragic event. All right. And I'm not sure. Yeah. I know he's in charge of the program, but a couple of people died, right? And these are young adults, and you got to kind of have to take responsibility for yourself. And, some of these things keep on happening, unfortunately, and I guess they're lucky they just get tickets. So that's what's going to be the major story today is Kirby's going to have to talk about all the off-the-field issues. At Georgia, instead of celebrating, trying to go, for their 3rd championship, Zach is going to, have to talk about Mike Leach, right? And hopefully we'll get a little comedic relief from Hugh, because if Hugh talks about Hugh, that's just funny on itself. So hopefully he provides the comedic relief. Because the other stuff is just sad.
I mentioned this.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
We talked about this morning. It wasn't until after Urban Meyer was gone and we realized what was going on at Florida that we went, whoa, that program was out of control. We're learning some stuff about Georgia as it's happening going, there's not a serious institutional control there. Your kids are doing some stuff. I'm wondering how much he's got to answer for so much off-the-field stuff today and how much he tries to dodge it. Because after we've learned about Urban Meyer at his time at Florida and how that program was being run, it's a little bit different in the SEC now.
Right. It's a good point.
Well, yeah, and I think too the question that you want to ask Kirby Smart is when Georgia addressed these issues with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, didn't they come out and when you start, you're never going to win a war in that respect. I mean, and I look, Urban Meyer, when he left Florida, there was a lot of stuff that had been, kept quiet. And, Aaron Hernandez was there and that really hurt his legacy. And a lot of Gator fans, I don't think they don't like him. God, I'm a big fan of Urban Meyer. I think, but if you got discipline problems, you damn well better address them, Matt. You know that. But otherwise, they're just going to metastasize, and you've lost your program. You've lost control, and you're not going to win anything. You're just going to get fired.
Well, guys, I know this is probably a curveball, but I was out of town last week, and when the Pat Fitzgerald thing went down, I grew up in the Midwest. I'm an Iowa guy. I remember when Pat played on that 95 Northwestern team. And that was just shocking to me. And that's a program that's not Georgia, but it was just shocking to me because of the character I assumed and still hopefully so with Pat Fitzgerald. And the Georgia thing, what's really, if I'm a Georgia fan, I want to be talking about a three-peat. I want to be talking about all this stuff on the field. And like Will, to Dave's point, today's more of a conversation about off-the-field stuff, which is very unfortunate because of all the success they've had in the last several years, and this is at the forefront.
Yeah, and he was there, the greatest player in Northwestern history. So that's a mess. But I think what we're seeing is you get the Georgia situation. I guess there will be a lot of questions asked about that today. But one thing about media days is that when Texas and OU announced that they wanted to come into the SEC back in 21, that was it. The entire Jimbo Fisher, that was released when he was up on the podium, almost intentionally to make him mad, and he was not happy at all with it. But I guess again, the whole media, I'm with Dave Schultz and all of us. I love being here. I love hearing what they got to say, but it would help the coaches and the fans would appreciate it if they would act like they are grateful that they're making, most of them, $500,000 to $800,000 a month. That's not a bad month to get, to go, to your ATM and see a deposit of, after taxes, $800,000. You're probably bringing in about $557,293.23. Not a bad paycheck. Look happy.
I had some of that. I could buy a Salvador Dali shirt.
I will get you one of these, Dave.
When I win this Powerball tomorrow, that's what I'm going to go buy.
Yeah,
I'm buying the
Dave. I'm going to send you
wardrobe line.
I'm going to send you one. You're a size large. You're
probably, unfortunately, these days extra large, but sure.
I'll get you an XL. The man that made these shirts lived to be 107 years old. Incredible man. So these shirts bring good fortune to you. All right, look, guys, we're about out of time. I'm going to head downstairs here in just a minute. I'll see you, Will. I'll see you, Dave and Matt. We'll get you back on here this week. We're going to be just going an hour today because of who's first up? Clark Lee?
That's what I think. I thought that's right.
Okay, so we'll get down there. And tomorrow, I tell you what, I'm fine doing this same lineup tomorrow. I love the banter with all of y'all. If y'all will come back, let's get the worst question and the best question of the day contest. So that's going to be everybody's homework assignment. Matt, we'll do this again tomorrow at 8 a.m. Central. Everybody keep track today. Worst question, best question. And I'll wear another Salvador Dali.
Not to belabor the point, but the best and worst question is going to be, where did you get that shirt? That's obviously going to be the best and the worst question. I mean, by the way, guys, he's setting me up for that one. I bet you could see that one coming.
I'm intermittent fasting today, and I am so hungry right now.
He's fasting and running. I need video.
And I did go. I saw Ken Capps when I was going to run this morning. So anyway, thank you, all of our sponsors, to everybody, our listeners and everything. Have a blessed day, folks. We're going to have a great time here in Nashville. We'll be back on tomorrow. Follow us, our updates throughout the day. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, folks. Don't ever forget that. See you tomorrow.